Welcome GMs to the actual Week 7 video. Uh, Starting off, I'm doing something again a little bit different. We're halfway through now, so I want to look at some of the surprising players of Week 7, or 1 through 7 I guess it is. Basically, I'm going to look at, right now, Alfred Morris. I think, along with AJ Green being very elite this year, we expected that. We expected him to be a top 5 receiver. He has over 600 yards. He's getting basically 100 yards a game, and he has a touchdown a game too. So he's just providing an unreal amount of quality for Witch here. But the biggest surprise for me would be Alfred Morris, 6th-round pick out of Florida Atlantic, a team that I absolutely hate, by the way. Comes out, does over 200 yards in a preseason match, and steals the starting spot over guys like Royster, Hightower, and Halou. And it looks like Washington has now found the running game that they need with Alfred Morris, and he has almost 100 points right now. He's a top 5 fantasy running back right now, and that's a huge surprise being a 6th-round pick and coming out in your first season and putting up those kind of numbers. The most disappointing guy that I'm going to talk about would have to be one of two, which are the tight ends right now. Antonio Gates had a horrid start to the season here. He just had a good game, I think a game or two ago, and he got his yards up a little bit. He has a couple of touchdowns. Jermichael Finley as well got drafted in the first round, and he's done nothing. He has so many injuries, and when he's back now, he can't even perform. I don't even know if Green Bay is going to keep them or keep him on his team. He has so much money owed to him that maybe they'll pay him or do whatever they can to get rid of him, and that's it. Another guy I'd like to talk about here is Maurice Jones-Drew. Getting injured now. He hasn't done too much this year after the lockout and everything. He's had a couple of big weeks, which are the reason for his 62.5 points. But other than that, 500 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns is pretty mediocre for that. And Maurice Jones-Drew is not giving WWJD what he needs out of Jones-Drew, and the running game for WWJD is really lacking this year. I've also decided to do the top 5 players of each position for the first half of the season. I'm going to focus on why I put Robert Griffin as the number 3 here. Even though he has the most fantasy points, the only reason why he has the most is because we have a large emphasis on running yards for quarterbacks. If you take that away and just value them the same, he's not near as elite. Look at what Cam Newton did last year compared to what he is doing this year. I think that there's a similar possibility that he will do the same thing. You can't compare him to Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady, but right now, because of his fantasy points, I'm going to put him ahead of Tom Brady right now because he's 24 points ahead. He has 1,600 passing yards and 7 touchdowns. That's not that great when you think about it. The reason why I'm putting him so low as well is because he has 7 fumbles, which is almost like what Michael Vick is doing. Luckily, only 2 have actually been lost. So for that reason, I'm putting him a little bit down. We'll have to see in the future weeks if he can hold on to the ball because his running game is pretty reckless. He's already had concussion problems, and I'm not a fan of that. Moving over to the wide receivers. Obviously, right now I have to put AJ Green and Victor Cruz at the top. Both of those guys are just playing unreal, playing their hearts out this year, and being the number 1 receivers for each of these teams. Like I said earlier, AJ Green's basically getting 100 yards a game, the biggest receiver option for Andy Dalton, and same with Victor Cruz, who's the biggest red zone target for Eli Manning. Percy Harvin also is playing quite well this year and is living up to his potential. Moving over to the running backs, I'm going to talk about Adrian Peterson because coming off of his injury, they were a little bit cautious about what they were going to be able to do with him. Is he going to be able to come back at full health and play like Adrian Peterson normally does? And the answer is yes. Right now he has over 650 yards. He has a 4.9 YPC, and he has 3 touchdowns. He's also working on his fumbles. He only has 2 this year, which means he's definitely gotten a lot better with his fumbles compared to the last 2 years. Moving on to tight ends, I'm going to look at Tony Gonzalez here. He's getting older every single year, and he's not exactly young anymore. But yet he's still playing his heart out, playing unreal. 430 yards and 4 touchdowns. The Atlanta offense has so many weapons. You wonder why they have a perfect record and look to beat Philadelphia this week as well. Basically, right now I want to talk about some of the players that are most likely eligible for next year's draft, because teams are starting to sell out, teams are buying, so they're trading picks away, and I just want you guys to be aware of kind of the top 5 positions or top 5 players of each position so that you know exactly what you're trading away when you trade your first or second round pick. Basically right now, Peyton Manning has to top the board here. He came off of a huge neck injury, and we weren't sure if he was actually going to be able to play like Peyton Manning did a few years ago. And the answer is yes, he is. He has over 1,800 yards, 14 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions, and he has a 68% completion rate. I have to say that that's the old Peyton Manning there. After that, I mean, Tony Romo right now I'm going to put number 2, even though right now he's not performing like that. The reason is because his O-line is just absolute shit. But Andy Dalton and Josh Freeman both are playing really well, being young guys as well. Josh Freeman's playing like he did in his 2 years ago. Andy Dalton is finally reaching that potential. He's throwing the ball in under 2 seconds and finding a receiver, so that's very impressive too. Wide receivers, I'm going to talk about Reggie Wayne here. 666 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's the biggest viable option for Andrew Luck, and pretty much the only option. They're trying to incorporate kind of a Pats offense by using 2 tight ends, but neither of them actually are very significant tight ends for fantasy options, and Reggie Wayne is the guy that is able to put up those significant yards. If you're looking for kind of a rebuild wide receiver, probably look into Eric Decker, Dwayne Bowe. Des Bryant, whether he's actually in the draft or not, he's a little inconsistent, so you have to watch to see if he can actually be good enough, and chances are if he actually does start being consistent, he will be kept. Moving on to the running backs here, Reggie Bush tops the board in my opinion here. He has 574 all-purpose yards. The Miami Dolphins at the end of last year were able to use him in the right way, using him in passing games too, and they are using him the same way here with Tannehill. And he has almost 600 yards. He has 3 touchdowns, and he has a 4.4 YPC. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive still. He's 75 points, and he's definitely topping the guys here. Willis McGahee, he's number 4. He's not the youngest, so, I mean, he might be a good option for a one-season type of bang player, but if they get somebody else next year, or they start using Hillman a little bit more, his role might start declining like Michael Turner's is. Tight ends, the most impressive I think right now is Owen Daniels. He wasn't near this good last year, and the thing is, they don't have many receiving options on Houston. They're a huge run happy team, and basically their receiving options are Andre Johnson and now Owen Daniels. So that's why he's able to get all these yards. He has 416 yards and 4 touchdowns as well. Looking at some of the deals that happened this year, there was a lot of tight end movement this past week. But moving forward right now, basically I tried to sell out by trading any depth that I had left over, got a couple of decent picks, and got a wide receiver that could potentially be a keeper in terms of the long run. So I think that both teams got what they need there. Rob got some extra depth, and I got picks because I'm hoping to sell out and hopefully do better next year. The next deal, Beast Mode's doing the exact same thing. I like this deal for Beast Mode. He traded Aaron Hernandez. He has some other guys that he can keep instead anyways. I'm not the biggest fan of keeping a tight end unless basically it's Gronkowski or Graham, really. I don't think that there's too many options that could be available for tight ends. So, I mean, basically I like the idea of keeping or getting all these picks instead of keeping a tight end. So we got a first and 2/3, and I think that's a good deal for him. I think the tank is using him for a one-season type of thing. He might keep him too. And both teams are Pats fans, so it works out well for both. Again, I did another deal. Beast Mode has been doing a lot of movements this week as well. But I traded my tight end, doing the exact same thing, trying to sell out, trying to get extra picks, and that's exactly what I did. I got another wide receiver that will probably be a keeper if he's not able to be sold. And Beast Mode got a good tight end here, so and fairly cheap, not too bad. So it works out for both of us as well. Beast Mode right around turns that deal, trades Vernon Davis, and gets a couple of picks plus a young tight end that he can later on, as you will find in the next video, he is able to trade away as well for more picks. So a lot of these teams are just doing a lot of trading and trading picks away. Power rankings, I finally decided to put Dante at the top after playing as well as he did. I mean, I just realized that he lost last week, so he doesn't have quite as good of a record, but still, that was barely a loss there. And based on how he's been performing, I'm gonna still put him at the top for now, because he's finding ways to get points, regardless of what I think of his team. He's getting the points and he's getting those wins, which is most important right now. Basically, another team that I'm moving up. Benchwarmers has been buying a lot, and I like where his team's going now. He has a lot of depth in receiver. His running game is all right. He has Brown, who's injured, and he has LeSure, and he has Matthews. So I mean, he has a pretty decent set there of players, and with the Green Bay offense that he does have, he's ruining right now. Two teams that I'm putting down. WWJD, with all the problems that he's been having right now, you have to wonder why he's not any lower. Like why, he has Forte who got hurt. WWJD or Maurice Jones-Drew, all the issues that he's had so far. His run game is just horrid right now, which it shouldn't be based on who he has. Now he got Fred Davis hurt as well. His team's falling apart, and he needs to somehow try to salvage it, or he needs to trade any depth he has and just call it quits, because he was a front runner, so he's the most significant decline of teams so far. Gold Standard, a 2-5 record, never expected that. 5 straight losses, maybe even a 6th now. It's not looking good for him. I don't think there's any chance of him making the playoffs with a 2-5 record, because he essentially has to win at 5 of the next 6 weeks. To even be considerably making the playoffs, and I just don't see that happening. Again, my team I dropped down to. Just not a fan of my team. My receiver core is just not where it needs to be a competitive team. I love my running game, obviously, my 2 favorite running backs here, and my quarterback. But outside of that, outside of my keepers, really I don't have a lot of depth, which means if I make the playoffs, I'm going to get absolutely destroyed, I think, in first round. So that's just the way I think this is going to be. I think that there's going to be some changes in the next week or two based on records, but right now this is where it's at. Halababa also dropped down because of that horrid performance that he had last week. So I think he can rebound. I really like his team, as probably everybody knows. I think he has a lot of depth. So essentially it just comes down to if he can get his team back to where it needs to be. But everybody has a bad week or two, so that's the end of this week's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you for next week.